Last month, I let my TBR jar pick what books I would read. And for the first time in recorded history, I read every single book on my February TBR. So for today's video, I figured we could go through and rate all of the books that my TBR jar picked. Before we get into it, make sure to subscribe for more bookish content like this. Without further ado, let's rate the books that my TBR jar picked. The first prompt that I picked was a book with a blue cover, and I chose Beartown by Frederick Bachman. Holy smokes. This was actually the last book that I read in February and my most recent read. Oh my gosh. I was truly not prepared for everything that this book was. I've heard Sarah talk about this book and how much she loves it ever since she finished reading it. I've also seen people on BookTok and just Bookstagram everywhere talking about this book, this author, and that this is just a good book and to read it. I never expected this book to be what this book was. To get the rating out of the way first, I did rate this book 5 stars. This book did in fact destroy me, and if you are an empathetic person at all, or an empathetic reader, I don't know, grab some tissues. If you go to read this book, grab a whole tissue box maybe. I don't know if this book would make or makes everyone that reads it cry, but this one destroyed me and made me sob, so in the best way, but also like sad. Anyway, this is a story about a hockey town in the middle of the forest. Their junior team is headed to the national semifinals, and everyone in the town is banking on them winning. Them winning would mean so much for the town. It would boost their economy, it would create jobs. The council has said they would build an academy in the town if they won. Like, so much is riding on this group of teenagers winning a hockey game. The first chapter of this book explains that a tragedy has happened in the town, and the rest of this book is the story of how they got there. That is all that the summary provides. If you read the back of the book, that is all that it provides. And honestly, that is just the tip of the iceberg for this book. Like, this, so much is covered in this book. The author's writing style in this is definitely different than anything I typically read. It's really not my cup of tea. I can't see myself reading a ton of books like this. I did really enjoy this. It's just not what I normally go for. It's pretty descriptive. It's also just kind of frilly, and I don't know if this makes sense, but it's like harshly poetic. However, this is the kind of writing style that you have to annotate. If you are an annotator at all, you will read this book, read a couple chapters, and you'll be like, okay, let me go get some tabs, let me get a highlighter, I need a pen. Like, I just had to. So I started annotating it. I am almost done annotating it. I have some pages dog-eared that I want to go back to and add some tabs and stuff. There are so many little nuggets in here that just, I don't even know how to explain it, but it encompasses, discusses feelings that I've definitely had and definitely felt or can understand, but talks about them in a way that I'd never have thought to talk about them before. I don't know if that makes sense. The author has a way of writing about human reactions, human feelings, as if they were your own. He makes it possible to understand the decisions that characters make, even if you can't relate to them, even if you can't understand them as people, you can still understand how they made decisions that they made. There's a lot in this book that will absolutely infuriate you. You will read it and you will want to scream, and you might scream, and you probably will scream. I think that's what makes it so good. The author's ability to make me feel that way. Frederick, do people call him Fred? I don't know, but he did some good shit here. Highly recommend. I love this book. It was so good. This is the type of story that is going to be sticking with me forever. I will probably never not think about this book. Do with that what you will. Shifting gears quite a bit, the next prompt that I pulled out was a book with flowers on the cover, and I went with Bonded by Thorns by Elizabeth Helen. This is a Fairy Loot special edition from the Romantasy box. It is stunning. I will give it that. I mainly picked this one because there are roses all over it, Bonded by Thorns, and I thought it would be fitting for Valentine's Day. This is a story about a young adult girl who lives in a small town with her dad. Her dad is known as the town lunatic, basically. He's a town crazy person because he believes that his wife was taken by the Fae. Everyone in town says that he's crazy and that Fae don't exist, and they're all saying that this is his way of coping because his wife left him. Well, no, he's convinced the Fae took her. The female main character is working away at a little bookstore in town and basically gives all of the money she makes, all of the money she saved, to her dad so that he can go off and travel and try to find a way to get into the Fae world. There's also quite a bit of drama between the FMC and her ex-boyfriend in town. There's like trauma and drama and just some questionable things going on there. Also, her ex-boyfriend is the golden boy of the town and he's also the worst. So one night, a hunter comes rushing in to this town gathering and exclaims that her dad is missing. He found his jacket covered in blood in the forest. That's Willow. She's sleeping. Miss Willow, you okay? You okay back there? So anyway, one night, a hunter comes running into the town gathering where everyone is and starts screaming that her dad is now lost in the forest, has been taken by something, and they found his jacket covered in blood in the forest. So now she goes on a hunt for him. And of course, her dad found himself in the Fae world. And now she has to go there and save him. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so you know where it's gonna go from here. My rating. I ended up giving this one a 3 stars. My biggest qualm about this book is the female main character. She just kind of annoyed me a lot. She also just acts and thinks like a child for much of the book. Definitely at least the first half. She's acting like a literal child. But I think she's like at least 21. Girl. I do think she gets better by the end of the book, but it was borderline unbearable at the beginning of the book. I also really didn't like the ex-boyfriend and their past relationship, and every time they started to talk about their past relationship or she thought about it, talked about it, whatever. I hated the way she put him on a pedestal and acted like everything was fine. I understand that she probably has to grow out of that and like learn that that's not okay and like the relationship was not good, but it just went on for so long with her not. I just wanted her to have a little bit more self-respect than she was giving herself, and that was just hard to read. Aside from all that, this was very fast-paced. It flew by. I read it super quickly. Once you get into the Fae world, things get a little wild, a little crazy. It is kind of spicy. This is a why choose romantasy. It's not like super in your face why choosy. I think maybe the next book probably is a lot more why choose-y, but this one isn't that much. I do think I might be interested in continuing the series. I think if it's on Kindle Unlimited and I can read it for free, I'll probably continue at some point. But that's based solely on the plot and the questions that I left unanswered by the end of this. I really just want to know what's going on. I don't necessarily want to be with the characters all that much. I just want to know what happens. This is the second book that I read this month. That's not true. This is just a book that I read this month. I don't know what order it was in. Anyway, next on the list. Okay, I'm sure if you watched the TBR jar video and you have read this book, then you were laughing at me in the TBR jar video, but don't laugh at me now because I understand. But the next prompt was a book with a sea setting, and I chose Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, which does not have a C setting. Not a C setting. In my defense, I picked this book because I watched the beginning of the first episode on Netflix, and literally in the very beginning of the first episode, they get on a boat. I didn't realize that it just was in the shape of a boat, but it had wheels. It wasn't going on water. Anyway, so there is some very thick fog over an area of land in this book. It's like black darkness fog caused by a magic wielder, a fae. I don't know. They're not really called fae. I forget what they're called, but by a magic person. Basically, it's separating the kingdom in two. The ruler really wants to get rid of this darkness, this fog, this what? I can't remember what they call it in the book. Oh, the fold. The shadow fold is what they call it. The king obviously wants to still be able to access resources and just be able to like have both of the sides of his kingdom combined. And right now the Shadowfold is separating them. And in the Shadowfold, there's a bunch of creatures that will kill you. It's darkness. It's not a good place to be. So it starts off, they're trying to cross the fold. They're trying to get to the other side. Our female main character is an orphan who ends up getting on the boat. She's a cartographer, so she is getting on the boat to draw a map, I guess. She gets on with her childhood best friend, and he ends up about to be attacked or is attacked, and she basically freaks out and unleashes a bunch of power that she didn't know that she had, and it saves everyone. So they bring her back, they get out of the fold, and they interrogate her, and they're like, oh my gosh, have you been hiding this power? What is going on? And she's like, no, I didn't know I had it. And so then she ends up being taken to the king, and she's forced to train and basically is in charge of saving the kingdom and ending the fold. So kind of a lot of pressure for a young girl. First of all, to almost die, to almost watch her best friend die, and then put under all this pressure to save a kingdom? Okay. Anyway, I did rate this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. This is a YA fantasy, but I feel like it doesn't read very YA. It is fast-paced, super, super quick. Also, the font in this book is really big, if that matters to you, but it really helped me get through it very quickly. Yeah, it's YA, but it doesn't give YA in an annoying way that sometimes happens with YA fantasies, so I'd recommend. I do think that the ending was predictable, but it was still good. It was still a very enjoyable time. I am definitely interested in finishing the Shadow Moon trilogy. This is the first book, so obviously 2 more. And then there's also another series that kind of connects to it. I think it's called The Crooked Kingdom. No, 6 of Crows. I think it's called 6 of Crows. Well, the first book is 6 of Crows. The second book is The Crooked Kingdom. Anyway, I want to read those books as well, so I want to continue this one and then get into those. But yeah, I highly recommend if you're looking for a fast-paced YA fantasy, this one was really good. The next prompt that I picked was a book about sisters. And for this one, I picked the first book in the Fair Isle trilogy. It's called To Carve a Fey Heart by Tessania Odette. This book, like this physical book, is the whole trilogy, so all 3 are in here, but I think all 3 of them are on Kindle Unlimited, so that's actually how I read it, because I didn't want to carry this whole book around when I was only gonna read a third of it. This one absolutely came out of left field for me. Actually, I'm just gonna put the cover of the first book up on the screen somewhere, because number 1, I don't want to hold this, but also number 2, this isn't very helpful because you're probably not going to go buy the whole trilogy like I did for some reason. So this one definitely came out of left field for me. I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did. I didn't know. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't have very many expectations for it, which I think is a great way to go into a book because it can't disappoint you, but it did more than just not disappoint me. It impressed me. Let me give you that right now. I don't know if the author would agree. I don't know if the author like promotes it like this, but I think this is kind of another Beauty and the Beast retelling. It is very similar to ACOTAR, and then also once you get into it a little bit more, it's very similar to The Cruel Prince. So if you liked either of those books, I do think you would enjoy this one. What happens in this book is that there's the Fae Kingdom and the Human Kingdom, human lands. In order to maintain peace, they signed a treaty where the Fae agree, like every so many years, I think it might be like every 10 years or something, they have a noble person from the Fae lands marry a human girl. The humans send 2 girls to the Fae land to marry, and at least one of them needs to marry a Fae in order for the treaty and the pact to maintain itself. The girls that are sent to the Fae world are picked like Hunger Games style. It's not that dramatic, however, they are kind of picked against their will. They're also taught their entire lives about how dangerous Fae are and how scared of the Fae that they should be. So they don't want to be picked. The girlies do not want to go to the Fae world. So anyway, 10 years rolls around and 2 girls are picked from the female main character's village. They go off to marry the king and his brother, the king and the prince. Well, 2 weeks later, a representative comes from the Fae world and says, hey, so those 2 girls you sent are dead, so we're gonna need 2 more. And they're like, oh, you just killed the girls? What's going on? And then the Fae are like, oh, no, well, yeah, we had to execute them because of treason. So the female main character is like, what do you mean? Those were 2 little children, basically, that were sent. They were treasonous? She don't believe that, so she thinks some shit's going down. Because the 2 are no longer with us, they are requesting 2 more, and specifically requested the female main character by name. So this follows the story of the female main character and her sister going off to the Fae world and marrying the king and the prince. Obviously, a lot happens. There's a lot of secrets that come out. It is a very fast-paced story, so it picks up pretty quickly and you're just along for the ride for most of it. I did enjoy the writing style and just how fast-paced it was. I did like the story quite a bit. It was very entertaining. If I were better at answering riddles, for example, if you've read ACOTAR, I didn't try to answer that riddle. But if I were better at that, cared more about it, or was better at connecting dots, I probably would have predicted what was going on here. But I had a suspicion, but I definitely didn't predict everything that ended up happening. So you can enjoy some plot twists if you're anything like me. I did really like the female main character, just like in ACOTAR. She is the younger sister, but she's also a little bit more grown up, a little mature, a little more, yeah, she's just a bit more responsible than her older sister, who also goes to the Fae world with her. I liked her. Also, the older sister is an enjoyable, likable character as well. I feel like she's kind of a mix between Elaine and Nesta, where she's a little bit more fiery, but also still like girly. I think that because this book is so fast-paced, we don't spend a ton of time with the characters. I mean, obviously there is some character growth. The female main character is like, it's from her perspective, so we spend a lot of time with her, and I do really like her. I just kind of wish we spent a little bit more time with other characters and developed them and their relationships a little bit further, but I don't think it was bad by any means. Because this book was so fast-paced, so much happened in it, and I know that there's 2 more books to this trilogy, so how is more gonna happen? I'm very interested to find out what else happens. It does end on a bit of a cliffhanger. Certainly interested in continuing the series, and I'm very thankful that it's on Kindle Unlimited because that is a great way to read the series, I believe. 4 stars, I do recommend, and I'm interested to continue. Winston is drinking water, so sorry if you hear that. Finally, the last prompt that I picked for my TBR jar was to have a bestie pick a book for me. If you watched my TBR jar video, you know that I texted one of my friends. She didn't answer, so instead I just called my husband in because he too is a bestie. So I had him come pick, and he picked The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. This book has been on my shelf for over a year. I got it in a Bookish box and then promptly canceled my subscription. Don't recommend Bookish box overall. Actually, I don't know. Maybe they've gotten better, but probably not. Anyway, I am really glad that he picked this book because if he hadn't, I probably would not have read this for at least another year. There just was nothing pulling me to it, you know? But this is a beautiful edition, and it is signed, I'm pretty sure. I think it's signed. But yeah, this edition is stunning. This is a contemporary romance that follows the female main character, who is the eldest daughter who moved to the US from Spain, and the male main character, who is an ex-football player who also works at the same company as her and is her unofficial work nemesis. One day at work, the male main character overhears the female main character complaining about how she doesn't have a date to take to Spain for her sister's wedding. She rants about how bad it'll be because her ex is the best man and she is going to be the maid of honor, so she's going to be forced in close proximity with her ex, and she's just not ready for that. She's also not ready for the pressure that her family is going to be putting on her because they keep asking and are expecting her to be in a relationship, and she just is not in one, and so that just adds a whole other layer. Anyway, that is when the male main character steps in and offers to be her fake date and to be her +1 at her sister's wedding. So obviously, fake dating trope. How fun. I do think that this one was very fun and very cute. I am rating it a 3 stars, maybe a 3.5 stars. My biggest qualm for this book is that it was slow paced. I think we got to at least 50% through and still hadn't gone to the wedding in Spain, which is what I was here for, what I was most excited about. Willow. Oh, hello. You want to sit with us? Here, I moved a bookmark and then you can sit. There you go. Want to sit? Sit down. I love you. Once the characters did get to Spain, that was so fun. I was kicking my feet, I was giggling. They got very deep and very emotional. There was a lot of physical attraction happening at the beginning of this book, and I was worried that it was going to be too lusty and not enough romance. But once I get to Spain, the author really turns it around and is like, nah, but this is deep though, and it hits deep. Also, these two characters are so cute together. Ugh. They're so cute together. Book does touch on some more emotional topics. For example, everything that went down with her ex was very traumatizing and sounds horrible, honestly. There are some workplace situations that are also horrible, and some family trauma. All of that really helped to make this a well-rounded book, I would say. I just wish it moved a little bit faster. If you're looking for a comforting book with a fake dating trope, I would recommend this overall. That is all, folks. Those are all the books that were on my TBR from my TBR jar, and I read them all. Not to brag, but I read all of them. Obviously, I had my TBR jar pick 5 books off of my TBR, and I think it did a pretty good job. In the month of January, I had a 1-star and a 2-star read, so anything is better than that. I am so proud of myself for sticking to this TBR, and I posted another TBR jar video for the month of March, so if you haven't seen that, definitely check it out. And I'm really excited to get into those books as well and to just continue sticking to these TBRs. One of my biggest goals for this year is to get through as many books on my physical TBR as possible, and this is really helping me with that. So I highly recommend if you have the same goal and you're just struggling to stick to your TBR. Okay, we got Willow. She keeps using her high heels and tipping and tapping everywhere. She has her ball, as always. See, she's just a girl with her ball. If I keep reading 5 books off my physical TBR, then I'll get through my entire physical TBR by December. Which probably won't happen because I'm gonna buy more books, but that'd be crazy. Anywho, if you made it to this video and you haven't subscribed, what are you doing? Subscribe. Do it for me. Do it for Willow. Do it for Andarna back there. I also have my Goodreads, Instagram, TikTok all linked down below if you want to follow me there for more up-to-date info on what I'm reading, what I'm doing. I post a lot of like book and reading updates over on Instagram stories specifically, so follow me there, check it out. But yeah, I think that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Say goodbye. We have to go play fetch now, huh? I love you. Bye.